Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for allowing me to talk about this. Can everyone hear me okay? Cool. I'll carry on. Yeah, so as Megan said, my name is Beth Redmond. I've been living in Manchester for 4 or 5 years now. I currently work for a tenants union which covers the entirety of Greater Manchester. I'm originally from Merseyside, if you can't tell by my accent, and I've rented more or less all over the UK, in Essex, Newcastle, London, Liverpool, and obviously Manchester now. And whilst I've only recently kind of become clued up on the law around renting and my rights as a tenant, like as part of my job, I've always kind of been aware of a very, very strong power imbalance that sat firmly with all of my landlords, who were all very, very aware of that and wanted me to be very, very aware of it as well. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that that's probably the same for 99.9% of people who have experienced renting, especially in the private sector. It feels like there's almost a kind of glum admission that landlords can kind of get away with treating their tenants like shit. And even if we know or feel like that's not on, there's little we feel confident in challenging on in an individual basis. And hand in hand with that is wider legislation which empowers landlords to act like this. So the government, either locally or nationally, kind of help them with this by legislating in favour of them rather than in favour of tenants. And what I'm going to talk about today is kind of about slotting the two together a bit more in a Greater Manchester context to kind of try and explore how we best fight against it. I'm going to try and share my screen now. I hope it works. Hold on one second. And I'm going to start. Let's see. Can you all see that okay? Cool. Yeah, so I'm going to start with this photo, which did the rounds a couple of years ago now, went viral. And I think it's a skyline everyone around Manchester will be able to recognise. It's quite a stark image. If I didn't give too much thought to kind of what's going on beyond the nice sunset and the silhouettes, I'd probably say it's kind of beautiful. And I really like the idea of industry and work kind of being like an important part of a city's identity. And I'm not inherently against a city changing. Sometimes cities have to change due to industries dying out or industries changing, for instance. And the majority of politicians you speak to about this would probably agree that the cranes in the sky and that many cranes in the sky is a really, really good thing. The photo means development and future and growth, which are all deemed very important to a politician's idea of a successful city and what that success kind of contributes to an individual politician's legacy. And I think more importantly, the important questions to think about now is, when politicians have an unhealthy obsession with growth, what does that mean for already existing residents in a city? How can a city grow successfully when it continues to displace poorer communities in favour of more lucrative ones? And how are politicians allowed to view the people they represent as disposable cash cows? Because growth, to me, implies building kind of on top of foundations, but politicians continually rip out those foundations and discard them in favour of more profitable ones. And historically, in places where industry has kind of played a big part in a city's landscape, like Manchester, it was common for workers to live close to their place of work because they couldn't afford to travel any further. And the result, kind of crudely, was the wealthier you were, the further away from the city you lived. And as time's gone on, and many of the industries cities used to survive on have folded and died, so have successive governments' kind of commitment to supporting working people. In the past, where local politicians would need kind of trade unions or entire industries on side in order to win elections, they began to kind of start appearing primarily interested in charming property developers instead of the people. And as with any other city in the world, as kind of Manchester's grown, the wealthy begin to see land and properties in terms of potential maximum profit or rent rather than building what is socially necessary, which is almost always social housing in this current climate. And this can shape entire landscapes. So in Manhattan in the 80s, for instance, an entire quarter of garment shops in Chinatown were evicted and replaced with offices not because they weren't kind of necessary or useful, but because they represented a limit on profit in terms of how much rent they could afford to pay the landlords. And I'll come on to examples of how that's happening in Manchester shortly, but I'm sure you're all kind of aware of, I don't know, your favourite gig venue or whatever it is closing down and being turned into luxury flats instead, which it just seems we've got an absolute abundance of in Manchester at the minute. And again, in Manchester, as the city grows, we've seen property developers kind of push the boundaries of the city centre to get away with squeezing more money out of tenants. So they perpetuate the idea that people should be paying for the luxury of a like respectable postcode, whatever that means. And we can see the same happening in Salford at the minute with developments in Salford Quays more recently. So this means that areas around the city centre, so Hume, Moss Side, Collyhurst, etc., they're encroached upon, and residents of historically working class areas begin to be priced out of the homes and communities that they've built over decades in some places. It's worth pointing out that in the 70s, Manchester City Council built at the time the biggest social housing estate in Europe, and in Hume, which had, if you can see on the screen there, it had huge green spaces, and it kind of represented huge potentials for public housing building across the UK at the time. But it turned out to be a massive failure. It became dangerous for families to live in, and ultimately the project was abandoned, and it's now often used as an argument against social or public housing, and it kind of contributes to the like bad reputation that comes with public housing. But one of the main reasons for the failure was the lack of resident input into what their community actually needed from homes. And this top-down approach we see replicated today, where residents have absolutely no input into what's built in their neighbourhoods. And I've included these pictures because I think the Hume Crescents were absolutely gorgeous when they were up. But also it's absolutely unimaginable now for Manchester City Council to commit to building anything kind of genuinely affordable on this scale. And a lot of you might have noticed over kind of the last couple of years that Manchester City Council have rightly come under fire from academics, from housing workers, tenants unions, but most importantly its residents, as their audacity in kind of canoodling with big property investors becomes less and less subtle. And for clarity, and forgive me if I'm kind of teaching grandma to suck eggs here, but I'll explain some of the different terms I'm going to be using, because loads of people within the housing movement like never explain what they mean. I find it really frustrating. So for starters, so private renters, what I mean by that is likely what the majority of renters I know are in, renting either from an individual landlord or a large corporate landlord directly or through a letting agent. And rents in this sector are allowed to rise with market rent, meaning that they can get very, very high. Average rent in Manchester for one person is currently at £789 a month, which to me is obscene and ridiculously unaffordable. Social renters or social housing, what I mean by that is renting from a housing association. So historically this would have been council housing, but many councils over years of austerity and even kind of prior to that have been starved of central government funding, so had to sell their assets, as in like council housing stock, to housing associations. And more recently, housing associations are being run kind of like small businesses, and rather than be focused on tenants, which is what I think they should be and what they would be if they were still council housing, they're allowed to kind of focus on finance and earn kind of money to pay their CEOs big hefty bonuses and wages and things like that. Council housing, what I mean by that is renting directly from the council. So this allows tenants to have some control over how much rent they pay, but it's rare at this stage that councils still actually own any housing. I think one of the only local councils which does it in the northwest is Blackpool. And affordable housing, what I mean by this is kind of local governments and Manchester City Council especially love to cite affordable housing as though it means what it says there, when actually what it is another case of being able to kind of move the goalposts to support a different definition. So affordable to them means 80% of market rate, which is still alarmingly high and isn't actually affordable to most people. And there's calls from academics and activists to scrap this term because it's basically deceptive and wrong. I don't know if anyone remembers when the Tory party kind of changed the definition of child poverty just so that they could kind of skew the statistics and make out like there were less children in poverty. It's the same thing, I think. And in light of the number of cranes going up, housing academics and activists seeing that put a report together by a group called Greater Manchester Housing Action, which I'm holding their leaflet up there. You should definitely have a look at their stuff. They do like really good blogs about housing, to kind of assess how many of the new builds going up in relation to these cranes were affordable. So legally, any new developments that go up in Manchester have to adhere to a minimum of 20% affordable. So if a developer, for instance, proposes 100 properties to be built, 20 of them legally have to be affordable by that definition. And after the report in 2017 and 18, despite that rule, there were no affordable properties built at all in Manchester. And the way developers get around that is by using what's called a Section 106. So what that means is developers can come to an agreement with the local governing body, so Manchester City Council, to get out of building affordable housing. So they could go to the council and say, look, we don't want to make any of this affordable. Can we build you a park instead? Or can we build you a road? Or can we just throw money at you? And the council, it's basically their prerogative whether to say yes or no. Manchester City Council, of course, will always just say yes. That's how we ended up with no affordable housing being built in 2017-18. And what that allows them to do is to kind of extract the maximum possible rent from as many properties as possible. And thanks to pressure from campaigners the following year, the rate of affordable housing increased. So it was 0%, and it did a massive increase to 0.7%, which again is shameful. It's not that high at all. So where there were 437 affordable properties expected to be built, because that was the 20% minimum, there were actually only 16 built in a year, thanks to the Section 106 loopholes. And actually, a lot of the time, the money doesn't even kind of come through to the council. The Section 106 maybe isn't even there. It's just that they've kind of got away with not building anything affordable. And one of the most concerning aspects of Manchester City Council's lack of transparency into kind of what's being built in the city is a £1 billion property development deal it's undertaken with the Abu Dhabi United Group, which is basically a development group which is owned by the Abu Dhabi royal ruling family. And together, that business partnership founded a group called Manchester Life, which now acts as a landlord for maybe thousands of people in Manchester city centre. They built loads and loads of apartments. And the council, who supposedly exists to represent the interest of the residents, founded this business partnership behind closed doors. No one knew about it until it had been done already. With the group, the Abu Dhabi group, not only are they involved in hiding their money in tax havens, but they're also responsible for human rights abuses back in the UAE. So there was loads of kind of kick off about that. But again, Manchester City Council kind of coasting, just getting away with all of this. And interestingly, the Abu Dhabi United group also own Manchester City Football Club. And despite the group's kind of huge fortune, such like a scale of wealth I can't even begin to imagine, their stadium was built using taxpayers' money. And the site that they lease the ground on, they lease it from the council on very, very favourable terms, basically. And again, can't work out why, because they've got kind of money to burn, essentially. And so the next kind of twist in the tale, like since coronavirus hit, and kind of in contrast almost with the ease that other councils and other organisations have kind of switched to digital meetings for important decision making, the planning committee of Manchester City Council has been disbanded. and kind of people have been told that it's not secure enough to kind of have meetings online. And what it's been replaced with is a system which sees any planning proposals, which is normally discussed by the committee and the public kind of have time to make objections. It's only going to be discussed by 3 people rather than the full committee. And a proposal, just for instance, a proposal for building in Hume, which would see kind of more mirrored luxury style flats go up, has received kind of criticisms from local residents who say they don't want the flats to go up there. It actually went to the planning committee last month and was thrown out because they didn't want the area to become overdeveloped. It was recognised that there was already enough flats in that area that it wasn't needed. Inexplicably, it got revisited by this kind of rebranded committee and was approved by the new system, which kind of makes a mockery of any kind of pretense of public consultation and local planning, in my opinion. Which I think a lot of the time is just put there for a tick box anyway, and the council can basically get away with doing what they want. And the same committee has the potential to approve a £350 million arena development in East Manchester with the Abu Dhabi group again, which has already been met with disapproval from local residents who feel they'll kind of be displaced and moved on, which is what's happened in other places. So for renters, there's obviously like a big complex, like depressing picture of how and why renters in Greater Manchester seem to be getting shafted so much. Is essentially the reason is the law and local government are letting them. And for people renting in Greater Manchester, all this means is that another London is basically on its way in terms of housing, if not already about to settle. And often developments are bought out by foreign investors who merely hear on the grapevine that Manchester is the new place to be investing in right now without them ever even having visited it. So people are buying kind of properties even though they've never really been to Manchester. There was a scandal a couple of years ago where it was found that new developments in the city were actually going on sale, I think in China before they were going on sale anywhere else, which kind of allows foreign investors to like buy up and have kind of no connection to the city whatsoever. And what that actually means is apartments can sit empty for years, and not only do they maintain their value, but they actually increase despite no one living in them at all. And all the while there's a huge homelessness crisis spreading on the ground below it. Residents can have absent landlords with no ability to kind of fix repairs, and letting agents with thousands of other residents to help before you. And with the help of the law, these landlords can basically turf you out with a Section 21 notice as soon as you can't afford the inevitable rent hike, and just replace you with someone who's earning more money in a never-ending kind of chase of profit. Section 21 eviction notices are the leading cause of homelessness. So that just means that landlords can kind of serve you an eviction notice and not have to have any reason for it. They basically just want to kind of increase the rent and get you out before you can kind of say no or put up a fight against it. And currently one of the biggest regeneration developments in Europe is taking place in Manchester, which is seeing social housing residents in Collyhurst, which is just north of the city centre, kind of worry for their future, as the council offers them no reassurance that they'll be rehoused in the same area or for the same rent or whatever it is. They might not even get a house at all. They just haven't been told anything. I visited a few of them a couple of months ago, and an elderly woman I spoke to there, it was the second time she's been asked to move for regeneration projects in Manchester. The first time, she said she had to be dragged out of her garden basically because she didn't want to leave, and she had to dig up her husband's ashes from the garden if she wanted to take him with her, because they just don't give a shit basically about the people who live there. So in kind of, I guess, conclusion, and I've just spoke loads and loads, none of the tactics kind of employed by Manchester City Council are new or subtle about the fact that they're prioritising growth and profit at the expense of kind of its citizens' welfare, but with like a collective knowledge about how deep the problems run and how kind of serious the consequences are for the city's most vulnerable residents. It is possible to fight back against it. Politicians say that the city can't function without kind of attracting big investors who pump money into the city, but there's a chance to kind of show them that it's possible to function. It's impossible to function if you also only allow rich people to live here. Because at the minute it feels like Manchester is becoming a city for the rich, and the poor people are all kind of being shut out and dragged to the edges to be kind of discarded and forgotten about. Thank you. That is the end of it. I've got kind of 2 recommendations for people. Again, this group, if you want to kind of read more about Manchester specifically, Greater Manchester Housing Action, if you head to just Google them, their website is really, really good for kind of blogs around what the council are being useless on, and all kind of current fightbacks that are going on. And this book also, it's called Capital City. It's currently in the Verso sale, so it's like, I think it's only a £5 if anyone's interested in buying it, by Samuel Stein. And it basically talks about some of the stuff I've spoken about, where basically real estate is kind of prioritized over everyone's well-being, and people are just constantly chasing profit and will never kind of rest until they've like got more money than absolutely everyone in the world. I hope that was okay and understandable, but let me know if you've got any questions.